Zoom's going as smoothly as possible. And we have asked you all to be here at 7 o'clock, so we're going to do our official welcome. My name is Mary Jo Danoff, and I'm the CTAM administrator. And the board decided that we should start doing some more educational type programming. And one of the best ways to do it is by Zoom, because we can all be at home and we can still learn at the same time. So we want to welcome you to here tonight. If you have questions during this hour Zoom roundtable, please put them in the chat. I'll be watching it, and our moderator will also be watching it, so we can make sure that we get all of your questions answered as quickly as possible. Which means I'm going to now turn it over to our moderator for this evening, Jamie Peterson. Jamie, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Mary Jo. I appreciate that. My name is Jamie Peterson. I was just recently came off of the CTAM board, where I served the last 6 years, and have been recently appointed to the Region 3 as our representative for Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan. So I couldn't be happier to be here with you tonight talking about season selections. We've got a great board of experts with us. We've got Walt Downs, Jason Bertoya, and Deb Jackson. And I think nothing would serve us better than getting to know a little bit about you guys. So Walt, why don't you start us off?
Good evening. My name is Walt Downs, and Ionia Community Theater has been around since 1967. And for those who don't know where Ionia is, we're right smack between Lansing and Grand Rapids, about 35, 40 miles from each. And we're basically in no man's land, because in terms of marketing and trying to promote our theater, it's been a challenge over the years. I got involved 37 years ago. Kathy Haney, who's on our secretary, is on here, and she's been involved even longer than that. She came on as a teenage or a child actor, and she's been involved ever since and runs our warehouse. But we utilize primarily in terms of most of our shows are at the middle school. Watt Auditorium was built in the 60s, seats about 300. And thankfully, the schools have kind of upgraded a little bit over the years, just adding a new sound system last year. And thankfully, it's a space that fits our budget, because it's very affordable. But we also have looked at other venues, bigger and smaller, depending on the shows in the area, and certainly have expanded. We're all volunteers. We have a 12-member board of directors. I currently just became president here just a few months ago. This is my third stint as president in my 37 years. And we try to do 3 shows and a review each year. And we do have that for this season. So we have 3 shows and a musical review for the season package this year.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Walt. That's it sounds like it keeps you guys busy. I can appreciate being an all-volunteer organization, but I might challenge you as far as being in the middle of nowhere in Escanaba. But let's hear from Jason next. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the theater group you're with?
Absolutely. Jason Bertoya with Muskegon Civic Theater. We're right on the lakeshore, West Michigan in Muskegon. We actually rent our spaces from the Frauenthal Center. So we have a 150-seat black box, a 168 proscenium theater called the Beardsley Theater, and a 1,700-seat theater called the Frauenthal Theater. Most of our productions are done in the 168-seat theater and the black box, and then our large musical that closes out our season in the spring is performed in the 1,700-seat Frauenthal Theater. Again, we don't own any of those spaces. We rent them all, and we're very fortunate to do so. Muskegon Civic Theater is celebrating our 40th anniversary next year, but that means we are celebrating 90 years of community theater in Muskegon next year as well. So we can trace Muskegon Civic Theater back to 1934 with the Little Theater of Muskegon, which is very exciting. We are mixed of volunteers and paid staff, and we have a group of about 340-ish people that are volunteers and or paid artistic contracted staff. We do 6 shows in a season, Our Penguin project opens the season, and then we do plays and musicals the rest of the year. Our season starts in September and ends in May.
That also sounds very awesome. 6 shows, and you guys are a mix with a heck of a lot of history in Muskegon.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Been through the area. Unfortunately, I've never got a chance to see a show there. But what a broad amount of performance spaces you guys have access to. That is incredible.
Absolutely.
Well, let's round our introductions off with Deb Jackson. Deb is from Old Town Playhouse.
All right, thank you. Old Town Playhouse is up in Traverse City, Michigan, and we have been around since 1960. We do own our theater. It's really right in the downtown area. It's a 270-seat theater, and we are primarily all volunteer. We have a small staff of 6, which includes myself, business manager, marketing, box office, and 1 production manager. But everything else is done by volunteers. And we do have a board of 12 trustees overseeing the organization. Our typical season is 5 main stage shows, which start in September and go through the end of May. And we have off and on done additional studio shows. Prior to the pandemic, we rented a space that seated about 70, where we would try to do more black box kind of thing. We've never figured out the secret of making studio shows profitable. So we took a hiatus during or after the pandemic. This season, we're trying out a couple different locations in town, but it's just problematic to make that equation profitable. And also finding right now, as I think a lot of theaters are, that with the way the world is, patrons really don't want heavy content. So we've struggled with studio. But 5 big main stage shows, and then we have a very robust young company kids program. They put on 2 main stage shows per year, in addition to a holiday show and their spring break camps. And then the entire summer, the building is taken over by kids with various 1-week camps to 4-week camps. So a very robust part of our programming.
That is impressive. I'd like to start a question off for Deb right away, if I could. With your summer youth programming, or not even just in the summer, but your spring and summer and holiday programming for the youth, is that something that are those shows also decided by the same group at your theater, or is that done by a different group that specifically works with the youth?
That's a good question. The young company programming is specifically chosen by the education manager, which is one of our 6 staff people. Although this year I have encouraged her to be more take part in some of the artistic committee conversations, but she really controls the programming on her own.
When you had mentioned during introduction studio shows, doing studio shows, what is a studio show to your group? What does that mean?
So we consider it more black box, more avant-garde, or not your main stage musical type of show. We had intended it when it started to be black box, and then it just sort of kept evolving, that because our volunteers are used to building sets and being more elaborate on the main stage, sometimes they couldn't help themselves by doing some of that in studio. But it was intended to be a place where we could do more black box and more avant-garde type material that's not appropriate for main stage.
Thank you. And you're using the same space essentially, though, for those studio shows?
No, actually, no, that we prior to the pandemic, we had rented a separate space and lost money on it every year. And so the board of trustees said, we can't do that anymore. Then the pandemic happened. And then just this year, we've tried using some different locations. We have an event center that has enabled us to do a few shows there, basically for free. They keep the bar proceeds and food proceeds. But we just haven't found the right equation for those types of shows, both in order to present them well as making them profitable. We did try, interestingly, the event center that we were using was not available in the fall for a show we had planned for that space. So we put it on main stage, and we tried to say in the marketing that, you know, tried to describe the show and that it was going to be done on the apron of the stage and whatever. But we found both the actors and the patrons, just by virtue of it being on main stage, expected more of a main stage show. And the backlash was not good from patrons about the programming. They're like, this is not what you usually put on main stage. We're like, yeah, we know, but it was just difficult to explain.
That's understandable. I think we've probably all been at the mercy of our patrons at least a few times when we come to selections.
Yeah.
Walt, I would love to hear a little bit, being that you're an all-volunteer organization, if you could share with us, in general, what does it look like when you're forming your season? You mentioned you do about 4 shows a year. In that volunteer environment, tell me how we get from script to season.
Sure. So there's a play selection committee. So a couple board members do serve on that, but we also grab volunteers, people that have been in shows before, been involved with the theater for quite some time, who read scripts, again, make some slate of proposed shows and brings to the entire board. And then our entire board will vote on what the slate of shows will be for the coming year. And I have to say this season is probably one of the most unique slate of shows that we've had ever since I've been involved with community theater in Ionia. And so we started our season with Sweeney Todd, which was on the heels of Circle Theater's production of Sweeney Todd in Grand Rapids. We're currently in production for She Kills Monsters, which is kind of a Dungeons and Dragons and kind of a straight play, but it's something that's unique and different that we haven't done. We're also doing our first true Shakespeare show this summer. We're doing A Midsummer Night's Dream. We've done the reduced Shakespeare, you know, the comedy version of Shakespeare in the past and had good success with that. But we have never ventured into the realm of Shakespeare until now. And then we finish out the summer. Our musical review is entitled Oops, Miscast. So we have people sing what is normally maybe a male solo, and it's cast by a female who sings the male song. And so it's kind of vice versa. We flip roles for, you know, let people sing songs that they always wanted to, but it really wasn't, you know, the song for them normally. So that's our season for this year. We'll be putting together our season for next year here shortly. Prior to COVID, you know, we were trying to do at least 2 seasons, be 2 seasons out. So we had some kind of, you know, plan to be able to work ahead to find directors, find producers, kind of put together teams and really have a real concept of a schedule. And COVID, of course, changed all that. And so, you know, we were in the middle of a production when COVID hit. We were doing Mary Poppins. In fact, rented the Ionia Theater. It's a 700-seat venue downtown, and did our first weekend of the show. And then COVID hit and weren't able to do the second weekend. And then we did one production about 1.5 years ago. We did a straight play, The Nerd, that I produced. And so that was successful. But, you know, we really, you know, it was difficult to put shows together. We do have the benefit. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you share with me a little bit about, you mentioned that you had a play selection committee made up of both board members as well as. So
it's a group of 4 to 7 individuals. So made up a board, but also ICT members. And so they read scripts. We have quite a library of scripts that we've accumulated, you know, in 57 years. And then if there's something that's of interest of the committee, then, they'll obtain a set of scripts and read that.
Can I ask you a little bit about how that works out mechanically? So with a script writing committee, do these individuals just read those scripts on their own? Do they come together? Is there a
Yeah.
scheduled meeting? Do they report to your board? Do they offer the reading to the group to come together to read the script?
Good question. So not everybody necessarily reads the same play or musical. So again, it may be one or two within the committee that might read it. In the past, and I don't know if they're doing it electronically now or when I was on the committee, it was, old paper, but, we actually would fill out a review sheet, after we've read it and with a recommendation to the committee. And if we thought it was worthy of their consideration, then we'd get more people on the committee to, hey, read it and give me a second opinion, or, take a look at this. And if we just didn't think it was worthwhile, then, it just, it kind of just ended with the one or two people reading it. But again, you collectively, kind of, do individual reviews of what you read. And again, the committee within that play selection committee will then kind of discuss and again, hone in on ones that are of interest or think that, would be beneficial for our group to do. And then more of the committee will typically read it or take a look at it as well. So
Now, Deb, how does that differ over at Old Town Playhouse? How does that selection process differ from Ionia?
It's actually similar. We have an artistic committee, but the artistic committee is all volunteers, and there's 9 of them, and they are elected by the volunteer base or membership base. This is a holdover from our original bylaws, where when the organization first started, there were actually 2 boards, a financial board and an artistic board. Now there's 1 board, but there is still this artistic committee. And I will say that there's been challenging times because they wanted to basically act autonomously and not really take direction from staff or from other input. But they do read plays. They break into genre groups, as Walt was talking about, so they're not all reading all the plays. They have a matrix or a review sheet where they rank the plays that they read, and they identify if there's any challenges for us to do those plays. Up here in Traverse City, we have very, very little diversity. So there's some plays that we'd love to do that we just can't. So they identify what might be challenges for the plays, and then they submit that to the Board of Trustees for approval. So similar, but a little bit different.
What about Jason? Can you fill us in a little bit about Muskegon?
Yeah, very similar to both Deb and Walt. We have a play reading committee, and we actually start up our next round of play selection next month. So we meet monthly. Again, we have a rubric, a matrix of reviewing the plays. The group has gotten up to 10 people at times. It's been down to 5 people. It's just kind of a fluid group as far as like every round of play selection, we see if there's somebody that wants to go off the group or if there's somebody that we want to add to the group. We try to make the group be reflective of our community, just like we try to with our board and with our staff and with our shows that we select, so that we have a nice variety of voices on the play reading committee. Again, everybody does, like both Walt and Deb said, not everybody reads every play, but definitely like if something starts to be popular, we'll encourage more people to read it if it's gotten good ratings in the review sheet. And we kind of start with so when we select a season, we select the shows that we want to do and then the backup shows. And if we get all of our shows, the contracts and licenses for all of our first choices, then those second choices are what start the list for the next selection. So those shows are broken back out into their genres. They start the list, and then we look at the old list and say, is there anything we want to keep? and put back on the list to reconsider. Is there anything we want to take off the list because we're tired of talking about it and not doing it? So, you know, we start generating the list. We will take suggestions from anybody on the play reading committee, from the community. Our committee is made up of mostly people from our community. There are no board members on our play reading committee. Myself as the managing director and our artistic director are on the play reading committee, and we are the people that bring the information to the board. So we update the board regularly at our board meetings, how play reading committee is going. We are starting so early this year because post-COVID, we have been knocked out by shows because we were selecting our season too late. And we're really close to Grand Rapids Civic Theater. And for multiple seasons in a row, we were picking the same shows. For however coincidence that happens, we were picking the same shows and they were getting them because they were applying first. And we were not getting them because they're a premier community theater and we're Muskegon. So, you know, there was some of that kind of stuff that we figured out over the years. And so we just decided that we would use that 18-month, you know, you can apply for licenses up to 18 months ahead of the production date. So we decided that that was what we were going to do, is start applying for licenses 18 months ahead. And we also discovered that we could ask for underwriting funds earlier for those shows, and it aligned with businesses' budgets and businesses' fiscal years, because we're June to May, and that doesn't line up with everybody else. So we discovered that if we were picking our shows earlier, we could start asking for that money earlier for those productions. Once we select our two lists of shows, the artistic director and I bring them to the board, and it's kind of a stamp of approval. The board is trusts that our play reading committee has selected these shows and done the work and vetted. And we try to, you know, a show everybody knows, a big musical and a small musical. Black box is where we kind of throw avant-garde, strange show. We just closed The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime in our black box this weekend. And then, you know, everything else is kind of sprinkled out. Sometimes, you know, we have a show in October. Sometimes we'll look for something that fits the theme of October. We have, you know, holiday shows. Sometimes it's, you know, Christmas Carol. This year it was Calendar Girls, you know, so we kind of play with themes as far as like where it falls in the year. But otherwise, we just look for, you know, what's good. We have also tried to stay away from too heavy of shows because audiences have enough of that in their life, and we've heard them loud and clear.
Can I go on an assumption here? Both Walt and Deb, can I safely assume that both of your play reading groups do take recommendations from outside of the group, like the board or a party, a member from the organization could say, hey, can you guys take a look at this script? They're open to those things?
Yeah, I would say my group is warming more to that idea. They used to want to work pretty autonomously. We've toyed with the idea of asking for suggestions from patrons, but then we were afraid that, you know, if they keep saying, well, you know, we want Oklahoma and we don't do it, they're not going to be happy about it. We did ask recently, we asked patrons in a survey what types of shows, so like how, you know, musicals versus straight plays and that kind of thing. That was better input because it reinforced what the direction that I was giving to the artistic committee, as Jason was just talking about, that right now patrons don't want heavy depressing content. They want more uplifting content. So we got patron input that way. One thing that's been really valuable for me, and I take it to the artistic committee, is the information that I get at conferences, like at the ACT conference where we do hits and misses, or you know, when we learn about new shows that are coming available at the conference. So I really try hard to take conference information back to the artistic committee.
One thing I'd like, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to put all three of you on the spot. I know that there's people in this roundtable right now, in this webinar, that do not have a script evaluation matrix. They do not have a review sheet. They do not have some material item that they're using in their groups to evaluate the pluses and minuses or hurdles and benefits of a script. Can I put the three of you on the spot and ask for you to share your versions of that with Mary Jo? I would
Yeah.
love for you guys to be able to email those to Mary Jo, and we can put that up on our CTAM site, and we can also hopefully share those rubrics out with the people who are in attendance tonight. That would be fantastic. A couple of things that I had taken notes on along the way was those hurdles that a script may have, and hearing the recommendation to the board and the board trusting that decision. That's not something that comes along lightly, especially for, I would assume, groups that aren't currently operating that way. I know a lot of volunteer groups. The decision of the season falls upon the board of directors. That's a heavy weight to bear, along with all the other decisions they make during the year to keep that show up. What is a bit of information, Walt, that you could maybe share, or a bit of I want to say, like, to start an argument, or to start the persuasion of moving to a script writing committee? What can you share with some of the folks here that they can bring back to their groups? This is a benefit because. How does that help your group, having that playwriting committee, taking some of that burden off the board?
Well, it's huge. I mean, the way our board is set up is all of us oversee different aspects, everything from membership to production to directors, of financial, seeking sponsors and fundraising. So we all have our own obligations in addition to, in general, board obligations. So again, it certainly helps to have a play reading committee to take that and create the slate to bring to us. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily rubber stamp. I mean, because there are certainly going to be some questions sometimes generated as to, again, the royalties are too expensive. It may not be the right time to do the show. And is it, something that we're, again, be able to cast it and be able to do the show. And so, we, certainly the board asks those difficult questions, but a lot of times those have been addressed, and we'll find out have been addressed and kind of worked through in the play reading committee. And again, they come back with, appropriate responses for us. So, again, it's, really, an ongoing dialogue, and it helps with the board making the ultimate decisions. But, again, it's one of those things where we're trying to get back on track to where we were, definitely before COVID, in terms of the play reading committee looking ahead and being able to again, much like Muskegon, where you have, here's my A list and the B list, and again, be able to work from that to again, use what doesn't get selected by the board as a starting point for next year's discussion, and start looking, in advance, because as you're saying, sponsorship money, finding directors and producers, and again, all those are huge benefits to be able to have that laid out in advance, moving forward. Because again, we've gotten ourselves, coming out of COVID with trying to put shows together, and just, challenged with, okay, we got somebody committed, and then, not committed. And all of a sudden, we're scrambling to make the show happen. So.
Let me ask a question to some of our attendees, and if you can, there is just a little reaction button that you can press, and you can put your hand up real quick. I would love to know how many of you, or how many of your groups, come up with not just your first pick for your season, but actually backup shows in case you run into so if you are coming up with backup shows, let me see your hands, right along with that initial recommendation. So we're looking at only about 3 folks here, 4, that actually are coming up with those backup shows in their 5 and their initial recommendations. So about half or so. That's not terrible. Speaking from my group, I can tell you that's not something that always happens. I know they do try to recommend a number of shows um, above and beyond, so there's a choice. Jason, this may be a silly question, but you pick the shows. Do you pick the directors, or do directors apply or submit
Oh.
to direct the shows?
No, directors submit once we've announced the season. We put a call out for artistic staff, and so that's for any role: director, assistant director, choreographer, music director, set design, everything. So once we announce the season, that call for artistic staff happens.
Okay. Deb, what about in Old Town? Do directors ever get a chance to submit a show they want to do, or do you find directors for shows that you've chosen?
Mostly we put out the call, as Jason said, we put out the call and for directors, and then the artistic committee interviews and selects the directors for the shows for the slate that they have submitted to the board. We did try last season with our studio. We did one show where we let directors submit, and we had minimal success with that, and we're not doing that this year.
Okay. Now, when you are meeting with your artists and doing those interviews or that vetting process, do your candidates, your potential directors, do they need to submit a plan? Or is there some type of application they fill out, or is there some type of presentation they need to present to try to get that position?
We set up interviews with directors apply, so they just submit a simple application saying they're interested, and then they come in for interviews where they talk about their vision for the show. Do they have ideas on a production team, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. Walt, how do things work in Ionia once the shows have been chosen?
So, obviously we, seek directors. I can only think of one time where we actually had to sit down and do interviews where we had opened it up and had multiple people that were very much interested in directing and had to put together a committee and do those interviews. But rarely do we have that luxury or our opportunity. It's more, who's interested in directing the show, and it's usually making phone calls and arm twisting and going to people's houses and standing on their doorstep until they agree. But it's one of those things where we don't but we do occasionally we'll get where a director will say, hey, I'm really interested in directing this show, and again pushing to get us to do it, and it goes through the committee and the board and gets approved, and they become the director. We do have one, and I know Caitlin, who's on it from my group, but we do have a longtime director who always said he always wanted to do Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and he'll come back and still direct it if we ever decide to do it. And it's one of those shows where we just said, I don't think we have enough people to cast the show. And is it a show that the community would to come to see? It's certainly an old-fashioned musical. So, so we have those where directors are just, in love and just, that's their fantasy to direct a specific show. And so they certainly are going to be an advocate for that. And so we've done that in the past with good luck, but for the most part, it is simply we pick the show, and then we need to go out and seek and find the directors and producers for those shows.
What I'd like to shift gears a little bit, because most of our conversation is kind of ideally how things work. In the best case scenario, this is how our season's chosen. But Jason, I'd like you to, if you could think of, a particular hurdle, maybe even since the pandemic, specifically about either season selection or filling those roles. What's a struggle that has really happened with your group in regards to a season?
Oh, we don't really have a hard time filling slots as far as artistic staff. We have a good community of people that are interested in working with us as far as directors and things like that. You know, always you could find another music director or choreographer here or there would be great. But the biggest struggle I would say for us was not getting licensing, right? Not getting the rights approved. I can remember, so I've been here for, this is my 6th season currently. And I would say maybe pre-COVID, we had a season where our first choice was denied, our second choice was denied, our third choice was denied. And we were like, just picking a music, and it was the big musical. And so it's like just picking, now we have to just pick something. And, you know, we don't go, when it comes to those kind of things, if we get beyond our second pick, we use our list, you know, because that's what the play reading committee is choosing from. But we don't go back to the play reading committee to have them help decide what is pick 3 or 4. The artistic director and I take over at that point. And we will communicate with the committee and say, we've been denied for both of our picks. We're on to picks 3 and 4. This is what we're thinking. This is where we're leaning. Does anyone have any objections to this? And we've not had any issues with that. And then we bring it to, you know, we've already brought it to the board, and then we have to bring whatever we're replacing our backups with to the board as well, and say, we were denied for all of these. So I think that was the most stressful in selecting a season, because then the time gets shorter and shorter too, right? So you apply for the license, you're waiting for them to tell you, and sometimes it's forever, especially if it's Concord, we all know. So we're waiting for the rights, and the date is getting shorter and shorter, and the graphic designer wants to work on the brochures, and so that can be stressful. But yeah, we'll see how this plan of doing things a little bit earlier goes. We'll see if that helps.
What about Deb? What are some serious hurdles that you faced at Old Town? I know you mentioned a little bit about how the artistic group wanted to have some exclusivity in that choice. What would you consider some of the hurdles that you guys have overcome with your season selection?
You know, first I'll say, Jason mentioned this, that there seems to be a shortage of music and vocal directors, and because we're a volunteer base, that seems to be a struggle sometimes. But so I guess a hurdle is that the artistic committee would like to do some of those more challenging shows. Like last year, they put Laramie in the slate. And even though it was exquisitely performed, I thought I couldn't give tickets away. People just didn't want that heavy kind of show. So this year, I presented to the artistic committee, we need 3 musicals. I gave them some framework. We need 3 musicals. We need more mass appeal, blah, blah. And they didn't like it at first, but they came around to it. And so we overcame that. But I guess there's always that rub of, actors, the people inside want to be challenged versus what do our patrons really want.
That's significant. Obviously, we have to take care of our members as well as our patrons. So certainly having that outlet and that choice. When you're facing hurdles in Ionia, Walt, what are some of those challenges, especially with your season selection, filling those roles? What are some of the things that you've had to face and overcome with your theater?
Well, and I think almost every community is facing this with every organization. Getting people to volunteer and commit time is just a struggle across the board for every organization in the communities. And, and community theater is no different. So, again, getting people to commit their time to, be on a committee, to be involved. But, for the most part, we've just been so established. We're fortunate. We don't oversee the young people's theater, but they've been in existence now for 30 some years, and they do from 5th grade to 8th grade, and or maybe even younger than that. But and then we have a great high school theater program. So, they're both feeders for, community theater. And a lot of times, a lot of the high schoolers they, when they're not in a show, they're going to be in our shows. And so, we're very fortunate with being able to fill the stage with actors and finding talent. But again, like you're saying, musical directors and everything else. I saw one of the questions in the chat when I got involved with Ionia Community Theater 37 years ago. We always had a pit orchestra in live music. And that's one thing that we've also, the last several years with musicals, have gone to canned music, and that's certainly it's a different type of show. And and it's just that to find people that are willing to commit for a couple months to play in a pit orchestra, is just very challenging. And so and somebody to direct it and be a musical director. So yeah, when you're an all volunteer and don't have the funds to hire somebody to come in and do those, that's our challenge. That's our definitely challenge in our community.
I appreciate you guys sharing that as well. Jason, are you guys operating with a live orchestra for your musicals, or do you
Yes.
use tracks?
Nope, we
Live-
use live orchestra. Our youth programs use tracks, and the Penguin Project uses tracks, because that's what comes with those projects. But we use live orchestra for everything else.
Are you sourcing a lot of you musicians? Are they adults from the community? Are you utilizing schools or high schools?
We will take them all, but they're mostly adults. We don't discriminate when it comes to that. And we don't change the rate of pay depending on whether it's a high school student or an adult. You get the same, everyone gets the same rate of pay. It's because it's the same amount of time and the same amount of work and the same amount of practice. So we pay everybody the same. And we leave that up to our music directors. So it's up to our music directors to find those musicians to fill those seats.
Deb, how does it look in Old Town Playhouse when you guys do musicals? Are you using tracks or live musicians?
Yeah, I was going to comment on that even though it's difficult to find music directors and to find enough musicians, I suggested last year using music tracks. Oh my God, heresy! That's not quality theater. So I was like, okay, but something's got to give here. So we have not yet used tracks. We've still have live orchestra, but it's we're usually down to we just need a violinist, one more, so it's usually a challenge.
Right. Everybody's out there borrowing and stealing from their
Yeah.
neighbors to join the theater. That's kind of how it always is. And for those of you that came into the call a little bit later, I do want to encourage you. We've got some time left. We're about 15 minutes left. We'd love to hear questions. Looks like we've got ones here. Do you ever find it difficult to find directors interested in shows you've selected? If you have multiple directors interested in the same show, how do you choose who directs what? What are some of the criteria you guys are using?
So I'll go first. For us, the hiring of directors and staff is all part of the artistic director's responsibilities here for Muskegon Civic Theater. So I don't have any input when it comes to those people who are selected. We haven't had a hard time having people want to direct shows. And when we do have like more than one person interested in one show, that's a conversation the artistic director has amongst them. Typically they ask, are you only interested in this one show? Would you be interested in directing something else as well? And so that's kind of, he'll use that to help kind of break those ties. I'm someone like when I put in to direct, I am willing to direct anything. I'll direct a comedy. I don't care what it is. I just like to have a good time and direct theater. So the artistic director knows that if he can put me somewhere else, if someone else is interested in kind of share the wealth, so it's not always the same directors directing every season. We play that game too. So we get some fresh faces and voices.
I do have I'm going to ask a question to our panel, and those folks that are listening in on this, if you have a pencil and a paper, I promise you this next question is hopefully going to produce some valuable information for your group. I'm going to start with Deb. Deb, can you tell me, I know you mentioned you guys have had some issues with filling the seats, and I think I know one of them. that you're going to talk about a recent show you did, but can you tell me maybe 3 to 5 shows that you've had tremendous success with and that you've had a tremendous audience response from? I'm gonna start your list by saying I think The Play That Goes Wrong was pretty successful in your theater, was it not?
It was fantastic, and in hindsight, it kills me that Easter weekend fell within that run. So, just by nature of the calendar, we had one less show there, but we could have extended that show, except the actors were so exhausted from the run. But it was super. It was really fantastic.
Give me a
Last
few others.
season we started out with Murder on the Orient Express, and that was a huge success. I think a combination of it, being a name that people recognized, and we had some new actors to the Playhouse in that, and the actors really rallied their peer groups, and that was really a huge success as well. And Something Rotten last year was pretty good for us as well.
That's a fairly large cast as well?
It is a
with
large
Something Rotten.
cast. Yeah.
How about yourself, Jason? A few shows that stick out that you've done recently that have just been a smash hit.
Yeah, Disenchanted is a great musical. We were so successful with it pre-COVID. We licensed the stay-at-home version during COVID, and it was just as successful with completely different cast. They was not the same cast, and it was just as successful as a streaming show as it. Well, probably not just as successful, but it was as popular as a streaming show as it was live. It for a show that nobody knew anything about, it was hugely popular. Steel Magnolias was popular for us post-COVID. Again, a title that everybody knows. And we really played with the diversity of the cast. And so I think that helped in our community because it was different. It wasn't the same old Steel Magnolias. Mamma Mia.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mamma Mia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walt, what about Ionia? Can you give us a few just really over the top shows that the audiences have loved?
Yeah, so we did Little Mermaid last year, and again, it was a huge moneymaker for us. And again, we even rented a nicer venue, Belding High School, 15 miles away from Ionia, but they have a brand new auditorium, and so to be able to do a lot of the tech things that the show wanted to have happen, and we utilized that venue, and we just did that again with Sweeney Todd. We did it at the Belding High School venue, and we got some blowback. Again, we're Ionia Community Theater. We have certainly variety of venues here, nowhere near the quality of the auditorium and the tech stuff available there, but they want stuff here local. It's gonna. That's the challenge we faced with it. But yeah, those shows were big, and but also big budgets. The royalties are big, so you're taking a gamble, but those paid off. So.
What about any non-musicals that you've done that you can recall having a big impact?
Yeah, for us it was we just did the Nerd. I produced the Nerd year and a half ago. Kind of, we thought coming out of COVID, it was still ended up being in COVID. And then prior to the COVID for us was Noises Off, which is of course one of my favorite shows that I've been wanting to do for years, and we finally had an opportunity to do and did a great job with, and had great audiences. So some of those shows are just the comedies are and stuff, and the farce and the physical comedy our communities just love. So the Escanabas and Moonlight, and we've done several of the prequel Escanaba in Love and Escanaba in the Moonlight, and we did Moonlight a couple times. So so those are the ones that do well in our community.
I'd like to ask now if we have a couple of people from our audience. if you are hearing a different style of place selection, so if your theater operates in a slightly different manner, can you share a little bit about how you select your season? And if you could go ahead and even just pop your hand up, I'd love to call on you just to hear a little bit about how your theater operates different than the format we've heard so far. Don't be shy. I promise I won't bite. Or if you have questions. Stuart, go ahead.
Oh, mute.
Mute. Yeah, so we have actually not had a place selection committee until now, and it has not done well. So this year we are planning for our 2024-2025 season. It goes roughly September to March. And that is what we're planning for now. And I'm trying to get the ball rolling to plan for 25-26. So it has been unsuccessful. What we've had is people show up and say, I want to do this, and it's not been good. And it's just kind of, everybody seems to be running and stressed out and not actually move forward. We've been in survival mode. So that's what I've been trying to move us away from. And I think what I'm encouraged by is that everybody seems to be saying the same thing. You have a group of people go off, do some heavy lifting, find some things, and then come back. And the board gets to have a say in that. So I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Change can certainly be tough, especially in a volunteer organization. I can speak from my personal experience, suggesting that our board or a committee select a season rather than allowing the whims of our members to come with scripts that they want to do was heresy as well here in Escanaba. But stay strong, Stuart. Stick to the goal. And I think as a board, if you are able to show the value and the merit of a production, and if you're able to get excited, if you are able to be the salesman of that effort in a positive way, in a positive way, willing to absorb the criticisms and such, that's going to get you that first step, towards a better situation. It's not an overnight process, so please don't hold yourself to too high of a standard for change. So advice from our panel to help groups that are still tied into being controlled by the members' whims as far as their desires rather than what's best for the organization. Jason, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, reminding that your committee, no matter who is on the committee, whether it's made of actors or audience members, but the focus is butts in the seats. Are people going to come see the show? Our community does not handle Sondheim well. We have tried to do various Sondheim shows and they just don't sell well. Our community is not about that. And the actors are, right? Every actor wants to be in a Sondheim show. So we have to have that conversation about how we may want to be involved in that production. Our audiences might not want to see it. So then reminding them that your selection is for your audience and your volunteers, but mainly butts and seats because that's how you make money.
That is a fantastic way to finish the idea of today's gathering. We need to keep our theaters going. We need to get butts in those seats, working together, finding those shows that work for our communities and our members. You guys hit on so many amazing things here. Like I said, I'm gonna hold you to it. I want to see those script review sheets, those rubrics, that matrix. I'm going to make sure that Mary Jo gets to share that with our groups. I want to extend my thanks to Walt and Jason and Deb. You guys were fantastic. I appreciate meeting you guys and getting a little bit of insight, as well as the rest of you. I hope you're able to glean some information from today's session. I know Mary Jo has got a few words before she lets us cut loose for the day, and I think I'm still on time. Am I still on time?
We're still on time, Jamie. one thing I'd like to thank everybody, but keep in mind, CTIM is trying to help theaters thrive. That's our motto, and trying to do these type of webinars and roundtables. Our next one will be in February. It'll be February 20th at 7 p.m. We have a fantastic panel set up, and we're going to talk about AACTFest. If you want to participate in AACTFest, if you want to just come and see what's happening, we're going in Michigan in the 2025 cycle. We'll be hosting not only a state AACTFest, but we also are the host of the Region 3 AACTFest. So you'll be able to see and participate with groups not only from Michigan, but Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. We have one of the strongest regions in this AACT Festival cycle. So we hope that everyone will get excited and join us and find out more about AACTFest. Just even if you're curious, come find out what it's all about and see what's going on, because it's a fantastic. If you think of questions after we're done today and it's like, oh shoot, I should have asked them this, send me an email at ctamthrives at gmail.com, and I will send that email out to our panelists, and we will keep this conversation going. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them before we start saying, oh, Jamie.
Perfect question, Mary Jo.
I have an answer.
So let's say my theater group wants to take that next step. So I'm going to be quite frank. Let's say my theater group, the members decide the show, directors come forward with scripts. They say, I want to do this show. And the board's kind of held hostage to do the show unless a better option presents itself. But let's say I want to take those steps to becoming a little bit better, to knowing a better way to do things, to being a little bit better on how we choose our shows, maybe setting up a committee, maybe helping my board develop in some way. Is there a service that CTAM offers that could maybe bring a mentor to me, or I don't know, bring some help to my board?
You should ask that. You know, CTM would love to help you. We're trying to develop this whole program called On the Road to You, and it's actually bringing workshops to your theaters. And we're developing a whole list of workshop leaders, and it's kind of a win-win for CTIM, but it's a bigger win for your organization because we're sharing the costs. A lot of what happens is we can't afford to bring workshop leaders in, or we can't afford, people don't have the time to go to a fall conference, but we really need that help. Contact us. We have this on the road programming that we are trying to find sponsorships, and we have money. Our whole grant that we wrote for the state was to be able to provide this type of programming, the Zoom, the workshops, and all this type of stuff. And we want to be able to come to your theaters. We're talking with a couple theaters right now about a sound workshop because they need more sound designers. We have another theater that reached out that they need some directing assistance. And then we had this fabulous youth conference up in Escanaba that now the East Tawas group is possibly looking at copying that same type of thing, and let's take that youth conference to East Tawas. So yes, please reach out. We would love to help you all.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. As we close things up, I just want to say a big thank you again to everyone who attended. Hope to see you again next month at our AACTFest, which is another fantastic gateway for your membership to see lots of shows.
And then Jamie, in March, we're going to offer one about sponsorships.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. I just decided that tonight. It'll be
fantastic.
sponsorships. I was going through and I want to thank everybody for putting what would you like to see for other workshops. And I have to say grant writing is number one. Sponsorships and getting community support is right up there. So I think that's where we're going to head, is talking more about community support and how you can work with your support and getting more sponsorships.
Thank you again, everybody. You guys have a great night.
All right. Thanks.